Today we're going to talk about common types of wood used in American wood shops. Now, there are literally hundreds of different types of trees all around the world, so I try to narrow it down as best as I could to woods I tend to commonly use in my wood shop and the ones my students use as well. But before we get started with that, I'd like to go back before this wood was processed and talk about different types of coniferous and deciduous trees and what those terms mean. Let's get started. When we're talking about coniferous trees, we're talking about evergreen trees, or trees that stay green all year round and don't drop their leaves in the winter. These trees make up our softwoods. Trees like spruce, pine, hemlock, and fir are all evergreen trees, and they are categorized as softwoods. In the image here, you can see a grove of evergreen trees made up of arborvitae, spruce, and pine. In this image, we're zoomed into a pine tree, and to the left and right I have two blow-up images of the same tree. On the left you can see the tiny needles that make up the leaves of this tree, unlike a deciduous tree which has big broad leaves. And to the right you can see the fruit that this tree bears. This is a pine cone. The term coniferous means cone bearing. As we zoom in, you can see the tree's nice straight trunk, which stays fairly consistent from the bottom of the tree to the top. This feature of the tree makes it great for construction framing, utility poles, and many other uses. You can also see that the branches stay pretty small when they connect to the tree. This helps make small knots instead of large knots that you'll find on hardwood trees. Lastly, in this image you can see that these trees grow pretty consistently from tree to tree. This makes this wood very popular for logging companies, along with the fact that these trees grow fairly quickly as well, making it a somewhat renewable resource. Here we have a pile of studs, or 2x4s, which are used for construction framing. If you notice in the top right corner, under the word stud, you see the stamp SPF. This stands for spruce, pine, fir. These trees have such similar characteristics that they tend to group them together when making studs. Here we have a group of deciduous trees, or hardwood trees. These trees don't look nearly as nice as evergreen trees because, unlike evergreen trees, deciduous trees drop their leaves in the winter. Here we have a white oak, although it doesn't really look that great without its leaves on it. There we go, that's better. Now, even though I had a picture of this tree in summer, unfortunately I did not have a good leaf picture of it in summer. So what you see there is a leaf after it's already fallen off the tree and turned brown. On the bottom right, you can notice how big the branch connection is to the trunk. That big of a branch connection would also leave a very big knot. Now that we have a good understanding of coniferous and deciduous trees and how they relate to softwood and hardwood trees, I'd like to go through a few of the common woods you might find in the wood shop. Here we have a very common wood, which is white oak and red oak. The red oak, you can see, has a slight pinkish tint to it, where the white oak is more white and tan. And the red oak will actually get a little less pink the further away you get from the center of the tree. Oak is really great for cabinetry, furniture making, trim, flooring, barrels, veneers, and all sorts of other uses. It truly is one of the most popular types of wood in America. One thing it's not good for is cutting boards. As you can see in the top left photo, it has very open pores, and that allows food to get stuck, so you don't really want to use oak in a spot you might be using food. Next we have black walnut. This is a beautiful type of wood because of all the different kinds of colors in it. You have everything from dark chocolate brown to a light pale brown, all the way to nearly white, kind of a yellowish gray white. And this pattern is somewhat random, but it does vary if you're in the heartwood or the sapwood of the tree. Here I intentionally chose a spot with a big knot on it, just to show you how big the knots could potentially get from a hardwood tree. Obviously this is a piece we'd either need to embrace or completely cut out. Walnut is a very popular kind of wood, often used in furniture, cabinetry, bowl making, and all sorts of other uses. Here we have one of my favorite types of wood, which is Aromatic Red Cedar. This piece of wood, you can see, has beautiful colors all the way from red to violet to yellow. It's also characterized by small little knots in the wood. The wood is pretty soft and can sometimes be difficult to work with because of how soft it is, but overall it's a very workable piece. Cedar is often used for fences and outdoor furniture. It's also used for things like box and chest linings because it smells really good to a lot of people. Here we have a piece of maple. Maple tends to be pretty consistent in color, and the grain is usually pretty tight, making it a nice dense wood. Maple has a wide range of uses, from lining the floors of our basketball courts and bowling alleys, to making musical instruments or cutting boards or butcher blocks. Even baseball bats and paper are often made from maple. Here we have Radiata Pine. Pine is one of the most common types of wood. It's used for all sorts of things like veneers, plywood, paper, boxes, and construction lumber. Here you can tell pine has a lot of gaps between the grain. It's because of how fast the trees grow that these gaps are so wide. Pine is also a relatively soft wood. If you're not careful, you can easily dent or scratch the surface of it. Here we have a piece of cherry. As you can see, it has a nice light pink color with dark, distinct grains. It also has a little bit of color variation depending on where you are in the tree, the heartwood or the sapwood. Cherry is another wood that is commonly used for cabinetry, flooring, veneers, and other small woodworking projects. While this wood is much more exotic than the other ones, it's still pretty common in America. This is Purple Heart. It has a tight grain pattern and consistent color throughout. The color is usually a dark, kind of dull gray, but when exposed to UV light becomes a nice deep purple. You often see Purple Heart used in inlays, such as in this clock. Here I have thin strips of Purple Heart inlaid into cedar. Because Purple Heart can be a little more expensive, it's often used just as an accent on small woodworking projects. Just to mix things up, I thought I would show you this branch cut from an ash tree. The ash tree has been infected from emerald ash borers for the last 2 or 3 decades. Because of this, a lot of ash trees have been cut down, increasing consumption. To wrap things up, I want to go over a few manufactured woods. First, we have plywood. Plywood is made from multiple veneers bonded by heat, pressure, and adhesive. Next, we have MDF, also known as Medium-density Fibreboard. MDF is made from hardwood and softwood fibers, wax, and a resin binder. Similar to MDF, we have particle board, also known as low-density fiberboard or chipboard. This is usually made with a veneer covering at least one side of the particle board so that it can be used as furniture. Lastly, we have oriented strand board. This is similar to particle board and it's very good for load-bearing applications. Because of that, it's commonly used for subflooring or sheathing. Well, that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope you learned something about some commonly used woods as well as a few manufactured woods. Once again, thanks for watching.